You have any shots you want to take at Ken?
Well, no. No.
Well, what about the mic? The mic positioning
the mic,
right
we're
now.
going to have to lower the mic.
Whoa.
Oh, jeez.
Just broke the mic.
Yep.
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Thanks for everybody coming out here. Elsie is on a very, very cold Monday night, although it feels like a heat wave after Hockey Day. Minnesota
Positive
weekend.
numbers on the temperature in my car.
I know.
On the thermometer.
Isn't it crazy though? Like when it's been like minus 20 and then you go outside and it's 3 degrees, how it actually just feels like it's like 50. It's beyond belief.
When I arrived for Hockey Day Minnesota, the day before, I went down to Hastings to check things out, make sure I had everything I needed. And it was so cold walking from the parking lot to the press box. The next day it was like 4 degrees warmer and the sun was out and there was no wind. And I thought, holy cow, it's beautiful today. And it was 1 degree when we started.
Yeah. How was Hockey Day down there? I did feel bad. Like the weather just really didn't cooperate. And you look at the crowd for the Iowa Wild game and you just felt bad for all the work that everybody put to it to have this type of weather.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. They had a great setup. The Shane Udella and his crew with the United Heroes League just did an unbelievable job as the host. And the facility down there is terrific. They had the way they had their VIP tents and everything set up and the food trucks, they were ready and would have been able to handle a full house crowd and handle it easily and handle it well and efficiently. And then it was just so cold that I think all casual fans stayed away. So you just had the diehards from Eastridge and Hastings. At least that was the game I did. The St. Thomas Academy Rockridge game came after, but I had headed to St. Paul by then, so I didn't really see what their crowd was like. But it was too bad because I think on a normal winter day, 10 degrees even, you would have had a full house down there, and they would have been well equipped to take care of it. It was a fun event. It always is, and it was interesting because we had some connections to the Eastridge team because Wes Walls' son plays for it. Pat Dwyer's son, the Wild assistant coach, plays for them. And another guy that was a guy that I knew from a few years back had a son on the team. But when you talk to them about it, they talk about that their kids still haven't come down, that they're still on cloud nine, that they're still bouncing off the walls with excitement. And that just, it makes you feel like, okay, well then it's a success. Because for a lot of those guys, it's for sure the biggest game they've ever played in at this point in their life. It might end up being the biggest game they ever play in athletically at any point. And so for that, you feel like every bit of energy that went into it, every ounce of preparation, whether it be our behind-the-scenes people, us for the game broadcast, the host community for putting it all together, it's all worth it when you hear that kind of feedback from the players and coaches.
And unfortunately, I was out of town this weekend, so I didn't get to see your broadcast. Like, did you come? Like, tell me about your call on Wes Walls' son's goal. Like, well, did you go crazy?
Yeah, it was good. It was funny because I was talking with Wes afterward. He was a part of our studio team throughout the day, and when I walked in between periods, he said, "Just so you know, that's going to be one of Rex's lifetime highlights is to have you call his goal and then have Kevin Gorg interview him at the intermission."
That's awesome.
And I just turned to Wes. I said, well, I've never before said Walls scores because he had retired by the time I started doing play-by-play. So I said, now it's a highlight for me too. I can check it off now. I got to say Walls scores one time. It was really cool. It was the fact that he got a goal in that game was a little bit of storybook feel to it. And so, yeah, it was great. That's awesome. It was exciting. And it, like I say, it's so cool for the kids. And I go back to, we've talked, I know, about our careers and games we did early in our careers. And when people have asked me about the days when I was covering high school sports, and I love those days and I miss those days. And in fact, the two head coaches on this team, these two teams, had played together in Hastings back in 98, 99, 2000. I was doing high school games at that time exclusively. I was at their game when they beat Joe Mauer's Cretin-Durham Hall baseball team to end like a 65-game Cretin win streak. I called their games in the state tournament. So when I started doing the research, and I was like, okay, you got to refresh my memory. Matt Hendricks scored in this game, I remember, and then you guys got too late. And they were like, how do you remember this stuff? I said, because those games to me, the way I prepared for them was always that to the kids, it's the biggest game they've ever played. And so I want to make it sound like the 7th game of the Stanley Cup, no matter if it's a high school game or small college game, whatever it might be. And so that was how I approached this game, just like I do any other. And so when they score, it was a big deal. I went, try to get a goal called just like I would at a Wild game. It's exciting. You watch them sell their hog piles no less emotional than the Wild players celebrating after a goal.
Well, it makes you think. I mean, we have Mark Lazarus here who's going to be coming on next, and some of us old school sports writers, you got your start covering preps, and one of the cool things about covering preps is that you are really read by people that are reading every single word with pride, because it's their son, it's their grandson, it's them. I mean, it's one of those cool things, and I think the fact that FanDuel Sports North devotes so much to it is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and our crew behind the scenes is incredible for that day. The effort that they put in for all the stories. I don't know if you saw the very intro to the day. It was about a 2-minute intro where they had Neil Broughton with Mike Modano, Zach Parisi walking around just talking about hockey in Minnesota.
Right.
And it sent chills down my spine. It was that well done. Trevor Fleck came and he's been a part of it from the beginning, and his job during the winter now is with the Timberwolves shows, but he came back to help with this day. He oversees all of it, does such a terrific job with it, and has just a great feel for what are some of the great stories in Minnesota hockey. And so that's a part of it. And I think your point is a good one, that it's a smaller fan base that follows the preps, but they're no less passionate. In fact, they might be more passionate and more committed, like more diehard, where they don't miss anything. And I used to always feel like when we'd go to do a game and it was Hill Murray playing White Bear Lake, and you just knew that for the rest of time when those guys get together, they're going to remember the night they played White Bear Lake, where when the Wild show up at the rink tomorrow and play the Blackhawks a month from now, they're not going to remember that game. And maybe if it's in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they get on the plane, they're on their way to the next city the next night. And I mean, and it doesn't mean that they don't care. It's just, it's a different life. These guys, it's the one time their senior year when they're playing their arch rival. They're going to be talking about it at reunions and at gatherings, golf tournaments for the rest of their life. So you wanted, and back in those days, I used to think they'd be popping a VCR tape in to watch some of it again. And it is funny how many times I'll have people tell me, like, I just threw this in the other night and watched you call our Coon Rapids against Irondale state or section baseball game the other day. And it's funny how many times I still have people bring that kind of stuff up.
Yeah. Well, kind of like when Burt Blyleven cursed right next to you. People love to bring up old stories with Anthony on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young Anthony LaPantis. It's like your press credential picture. It's like from 20 years ago.
I think I still look that young.
Yeah. All right. So again, thanks for coming out for Elsie's. Hopefully this will be a nice diversion with some of the things going on in town. We have some merch up here as well. And by the way, we got a bunch of text messages, Anthony and I, this week, where we showed our fashion expertise by picking out our next group of merchandise. The thing that I picked out the most is going to be a foam puck that is meant to be a stress reducer. And every time that Anthony basically stresses me out during the show, I'm just going to absolutely squeeze the hell out of this thing. So I'll probably be going through one a show, Anthony.
Yeah, I won't need any.
Yeah. You will not need any because you don't have a heartbeat. But anyway, so we got a ton of, so these are collector's items. So if you come up, ask a question during the show, you're going to be getting some of our last ever of this version of Worst Seats in the House gear. Anthony, the Wild have played two games since our last show. One was an overtime win over Detroit. One was a loss to Florida. This team loves to seemingly go through regulation into overtime. That's what now, 20?
20.
Yeah.
Tied for the most in the league. It's every night. It just feels like we just come prepared. I've always made the half joke where I've said when I get to the rink every day, I just hope it's 4-3 in overtime, and I'm okay with either side winning. I just want a great game, and we got 4-3 in overtime each of the last two. And there is something to be said for the fact that Minnesota's done a great job for the most part this year, finding ways to force those games into overtime. They had the rare exception in Montreal on the last trip. And that was only the second time they've lost a 1-goal game in regulation all year. Florida hasn't had one. They're the only team with fewer. And John Hines was asked about it today, and he said, it isn't like we're playing just to get to overtime. We're trying to win the game in regulation, but you also have to be smart when you're 2 or 3 minutes away from at least earning a point. And they've been great with that. They've always found a way to get those games at least into the extra session so that even when they've lost, they've maintained a point in the standings. And 1 up and 1 down on this stretch here with Detroit and Florida. That Florida team they look to me like they're ready to start to push. Getting Brad Marchand back changed that team a lot. I mean, Tkachuk obviously had come back a couple games earlier, but they're starting to look more like the Panthers, and they played like the Panthers, I thought, in that game. And it was a hard-fought battle. The Wild did have a brief lead in the third period, but to me, it was a good point earned by the Wild on a night where Florida was good.
It does feel like overtimes, and it doesn't feel, it is. Overtimes are up in the National Hockey League this year, and I do think the standings become so squeezed together that it is almost natural. I remember this back in the day when there were ties in this league, where in the end of overtime, you would see no chances because everybody wanted to maintain that point. And we're seeing that now. I mean, look at the game in Montreal where the Wild just were trying for dear life to the point that Brock Faber actually looks at the clock and loses Caulfield because they're just trying to get that point. And, that to me is another problem with the system. You and I have talked about how we don't love the loser point for so much, but I just think there's so much pressure to just get that 1 point in the standings that the last 2-3 minutes of games this season, it's become almost epidemic that there's just not chances being taken, that people are just trying to hold on.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I'll have to do each year we've done the little exercise where I've gone through the standings and then said, okay, if you just had wins and losses, how different would the standings look? I'll have to do that again. I haven't done it for a while yet this year to see if it truly would change them much. Most years it hasn't changed the standings very much. There's been maybe one team that got bumped out and one team that got moved in. And I think the game in Montreal was as much the Wild just hanging on for dear life because they were out of gas as much as trying to find a way just to get that point. It was the 4th game in 6 nights, second of back-to-backs, a Montreal team that had 2 nights off in a row, and I think the Wild were running on fumes, and that's why at the end it just felt like just somehow, some way, they were under siege for about 2.5 minutes at the end of the game, and still got a chance. In the final,
it's crazy
final
that
seconds.
They actually got a scoring chance there. But you're right. I mean, it was 4 straight shifts of just being on its heels and just waiting for praying that Wally would just steal them the point. And obviously, he gave up the goal to Caulfield there at the end. It does feel like right now, this team is starting to bleed goals a little bit against. I mean, both goalies are now giving up 3-4 goals a game. And this has been something for the last 10 or 11 games. And that, I know John is trying to harp on them becoming, back into that structured mentality. But what do you make of just the way that they've been giving up goals lately?
Yeah, I think the defense has been a little leaky, and a lot of it's goaltending, though. And I was just going to pull this up because I built a graphic for tomorrow that analyzes exactly what you're talking about. And the numbers aren't that different, but the goaltending hasn't been as stellar. So I went back to the 1st of November, which is when they started to play well. And from November 1st through the 20th of December, just before the holiday break, at that, they went 19-3-2 over that stretch. They were giving up 1.79 goals a game. That's a long stretch to give up that few goals. Then in the last 17, they've given up 3.59 goals a game, so more than double. But if you look at it, the expected goals against and the high danger chances against are actually down a little bit over the second stretch. The difference is they had a 94 save percentage during the first stretch and 87.9 during the second. So you could argue that there have been a few more high quality chances, but the numbers really don't support that. It's been largely the same defensive effort It was just the goaltending was off the charts good, and now it's been middle of the road.
And some of their common denominators still, though, are, you don't have Brodin out there. You don't have Eriksson. I hear your point, though, that the goaltending just hasn't been as good. But I also do think that they're giving up, some chances that
it feels that way. It for sure does. But then when you look at it and you say, but the expected goals against are actually down just a hair, like 2.7 to 2.56 or something like that. And so that would tell you that they're really not, but it sure feels like it. It feels like there's that one extra rebound that doesn't get cleared away, maybe a little more time in their own zone than they were spending earlier in the year. There are some things that the eye tests tell you are just not quite.
The other thing, and I was having a conversation with a scout in the league about this the other day, but because the Wild really don't practice now, like 23-year-old goalies like Wallstedt, they need to practice. Same thing with Gus. And I think that's part of the issue. You don't get the same reps in a morning skate. You don't get the same reps on, if it's a quote unquote day off, but like 3 or 4 guys go out on the ice. You don't get those type of things. And so I do think that's part of the issue here.
And they're hamstrung by the schedule. And the injuries certainly have played a part of that. But I wonder I haven't really gone and asked others to find out if other teams are practicing any more or any less. It doesn't seem like it. The few people I have talked to have said the same thing. Like our team, we practice once a month or twice a month. And I think right now there have been a few spots where the Wild had the option to practice and didn't. And I think it was coming on the heels of 4 games in 6 nights in 4 cities where it was, our guys just need a day to rest.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody from the league 3 or 4 days ago about the hellacious schedule this season for teams and how injuries right now are up. And remember, I said to you a couple of weeks ago in this pod that it almost feels like the human body can't take this type of workload on a condensed basis the way that these teams are. And the league is starting to analyze this. And they are going to try to figure out that every 2 years, with the international games coming on the NHL calendar with the World Cup and then the Olympics, of figuring out some sort of way to stretch this out where you're not playing. I mean, it's crazy to have this many games, 16, 17 games a month. It's nuts.
And there have been so many stretches of 4 and 6, 6 and 9 for Minnesota this year that way more than I can ever remember. And, I know we joked about it the other day that if I look at ourselves and I think if we're starting to feel run down, imagine what the players are that are actually like physically exerting themselves, not just thinking a lot on a game day. But I haven't been untired since Christmas.
Yeah.
Like you're just constantly feeling like, okay, I just got home, but we got home at 5 p.m. because we flew the day after a game and now tomorrow's a game night. So you're immediately back into prep mode for the next opponent. And it's the players, it has to be it's just such a physical grind for them that I almost feel like right now the Wild are just saying, we just got to get to the break. Yeah. But the reality is it's not a break for half of their roster.
And you're right. They have so many guys going to the Olympics and I was talking to Brock Faber about this today. Like you feel for, these guys want to be in there healthy, and Eriksson and Boldy are back, but they feel for Jonas Brodin. I mean, he really did make, I know that this might sound like the wrong word to use because everybody here that are Wild fans look at this as like, this is Jonas's job. They're the ones that pay him $6 million. But that Brock, that he basically said that Jonas made a very unselfish decision. They basically said, look, you can continue to try to play through this nagging injury, but I'm telling you, if you go to the Olympics, you're not going to get through the season. And then he finally said, for somebody that desperately wanted to be in his first and probably only Olympics, he's like, all right, let's just have the surgery. And he had surgery, and he's going to be back in 6 to 8 weeks and hopefully feeling better. And obviously, as we all know that have watched Jonas Brodin play here since he was drafted in 2011, we know how invaluable he is to this lineup.
Well, and how quickly he seems to look at full speed when he does come back.
It's crazy.
And for the Wild, the timing couldn't be better, really. If you have a guy that's going to sit that, he's got 5 to 7 weeks left right now, and you figure 3 of those are going to be when there are no games going on because of the Olympic break. So you don't really miss the guy for 2 full months of games. So and I just hope he comes back healthy and this is in his rearview mirror. He's been fighting injuries for the last 3 years, and some of it you can say, well, he's starting to get up there in age, it's wear and tear, but then some of it's just bad luck. He ended up missing a stretch of games blocking a puck where he broke his foot at one point. I mean, that could happen to a rookie just as easily as a veteran. But I hope that when he comes back this time that it's at full speed, at 100% and ready to, because if he's healthy, this Wild defensive core 1 through 6 is, in my opinion, number one in the NHL.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on that point, I want to get to, but I will say this: the injury that Jonas had here is one of those wear and tear injuries where clearly it's one that hockey players get all the time, and we've seen it here in Minnesota. And the one thing that we learned last year with Kaprizov, especially, is this is not one that you want to just try to rehab naturally. Eventually, you have to go into the knife. On your point on 1 through 6, the one thing that's very clear is with Faber and Quinn Hughes playing 30, 31 minutes a game. We talked to John Hines about this today. How sustainable is that? I mean, it feels like you're going to run these guys into the ground if you have a third pair that right now you don't. I know John kind of took umbrage with my characterization of it today, but a third pair that you don't really trust and at times and putting them on the ice. But now I get it. I mean, if Quinn is out there and Brock is out there, any coach is going to play them 25 to 30 minutes a night. But it does
25, 26 is a lot different than 31.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it'll be once your second pair is Brodin and Spurgeon and your third pair is Middleton and Bogosian. I mean, right now you're missing 2 of the 6 to which I refer. So now you've got Middleton playing with Spurgeon on the second set. Brodin and Spurgeon are better. Now you've got Middleton off the third pair and Bogosian hurt.
Yeah.
It's a different deal. And I heard John's answer today, and there is a little truth to that. There have been some spots where, Quinn Hughes had a 4-minute shift officially the other night. It was split by a TV timeout in the middle, but he was still on the ice for the full power play and then a half a minute afterward. And there are times in games where you can see that he feels like we got a chance here, so I'm going to stay on the ice. And, so far it hasn't burned him.
The funniest part of that 4-minute shift is that these aren't 4 minutes where he's being hemmed in his own zone. These are 4-minute offensive zone shifts. It's crazy.
Right. But I think we'll see that come down. I think it'll be more like a 25, 26, somewhere in that neighborhood with your second pair right around 20 and your third pair in the 12 to 14 range. I think in an ideal world, that's where this would, assuming that there's not a night where special teams are crazy minutes on one side or the other.
Yep. A couple more minutes left before we bring up Mark Lazarus from The Athletic. Going to have some fun chatting Chicago Blackhawks. And he's our quasi also Dallas Stars writer. So if you want to attack him, he's our Stars writer because he'll be probably covering that series with us. But if you have any questions, come on up right now. Otherwise, we'll bring Mark up. Anybody? Schuster? There we go. Ken? You have any shots you want to take at Ken?
No. No.
Well, what about the mic? The mic positioning right now.
We're going to have to lower the mic.
Whoa.
Oh, jeez.
Just broke the mic.
Yep.
All right. I think you should go with all 4.
Okay, so first question, percentage chance of Hughes re-signing?
Oh, you want us to answer now?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think he loves it here. I think he thinks he can win here, but he's got to win here. I think if there was ever a playoff for the Wild to make and have a run, this is a pretty important one. I think it's got to make a statement to him.
I'll give you a shorter answer. I'll just answer your question. I'll say 74%.
74. What about the other 26? What are the factors?
I think it's 74% that he signs here. I think it's really likely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too. I think that he sees, he's gobbling up points. He's having fun with his players. I think he likes it. This organization, the way he's treated. Again, I had a long conversation with his parents today for the story I'm writing. And every time I talk to them, I get the impression that he loves it here and that they love him being here. So,
well, we need him. 2 quick ones then. Yurchek, has he got a future here?
I think it's unlikely.
Yeah.
And part of it is when you look at the rest of the defensive core. Right now, Damon Hunt's played really well. And I think Damon Hunt has become the 7th defenseman. It's obvious he has because the guys they keep bumping down when other people are healthy are Spacek and Jiricek. I don't think that means that he has zero future in the NHL. I don't think anybody's ready to say that yet, but he definitely hasn't developed like either Columbus hoped or Minnesota had hoped that he would by this point in his career.
Yeah. The only thing I could tell you is like the reason why I don't think he has a future here is I do think he's the type of guy that you're probably going to either throw into a trade or, as I broached today in our Insider, if I were Bill Guerin at this point, I would probably try to figure out, and I think some of it is known, who are some of the teams that went after Jiricek in the Columbus deal to begin with, and then try to see if you can get a first-round pick for him, and then try to use that first-round pick to make another trade easier here, because the Wild have no 2026 first-round pick. From what I understand from myriad sources, Nashville offered 2 first-round picks to Columbus for Jiricek, and Columbus still took the Wild deal. So Nashville is one of those teams I would at least call and broach to say, hey, do you want him? I did find it interesting that Jeff Kilty, who's their assistant GM, who I have not seen at a Wild home game all year, he was at the Detroit game the other day in a game that he was playing. So anyway, look, I the one thing about David, getting to know him, is like, first of all, this is a kid that wants to be good. I think is very coachable from everything we talked that we've gathered. I know that Joe Smith went down to Hastings the other day and sat down with Craig Cronin for a long, long time, and he went on and on about what his admiration for this kid. But he's got to become more consistent. Like the first period against Detroit the other day, I don't know what you thought, Anthony, but I thought he looked like the best goal defenseman in the league. And then the second period started. You know what I mean? And that's what he has to get out of the way. I mean, he would have so many games at the beginning of this year where he'd play a great 35 minutes, and then all of a sudden, midway through that second period, he'd take that penalty.
It just seems like he doesn't think his way through the game very well.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, he does still have a skill set that was why he was picked where he was picked, and that's why I say I don't think it's. I'm not ready to say he doesn't have a future in the NHL. I just don't know if it's here based on the rest of the defensive core that Minnesota's built.
And I just think that he needs to, it's like every shift he tries to justify where he was taking in the first round, and he just needs to play, man. Like, simplify it. Don't worry about where you're picked and what people are saying and what the Wild gave up on you. Just play. And but I think that sometimes he puts so much pressure on himself because, he probably reads too much, hears too much, and sometimes you just need to turn off that noise and just play.
Okay, quickly, another couple. So Haight, has he got a future as a third or fourth liner, or is he more likely to be tossed in on a trade?
I wouldn't say he's a toss in on a trade right now. I think he showed some promise. He was good on faceoffs, showed some speed. He's really young in his career right now. I wouldn't necessarily even slot him as a third or fourth line guy. I think there's a chance he's going to end up being a better player than that in the NHL. And, he's got a long way to go before, but I think the Wild really liked what they saw from him when he came up here.
Good. Yeah. The only thing I will tell you, and this is the sports writer in me, is I don't think that there's a prospect in this organization right now that I'd feel comfortable saying has a future here. The Wild are going to make a trade, and they don't want to take off their NHL lineup, and they have no first-round pick, which, just do the math, it's going to be prospects and picks. And they feel their window to win is right now. There's a pressure because they give up so many picks to get so many prospects to get Quinn, and they have to go up against Dallas and Colorado in the first 2 rounds if they want to get to where they want to go. So I just think that right now, from Jesper Wallstedt to Danilo Yurov to Hunter Haight to Kivi Arju to Adam Bennick to Riley Height to David Jiricek, like, anybody's fair game if the price is right in a trade.
Okay, so last one, and then I'll cede the mic to the others. Imagine you're the GM now. Who are you likely to want to trade for, and what are you willing to give up?
Well, I always hate speculating on trades because I don't know the other teams well enough to know who's looking to move guys and what they're looking to acquire. But I will say that if you've made the move the Wild have made to get Quinn Hughes, I can't imagine not making the next move and bringing a center in. or a top 6 forward.
Yeah.
But to me, a center is what this team needs. Part of it is, to Michael's point, who you're going to face in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. And I don't think you make the first trade without at least making every effort to make the second one. The window right now is here. And so for that reason, I don't know who those guys might be. I know Michael has thrown out some names on some of our earlier shows, and it all depends on the price.
Yeah.
There's I would be hesitant to trade some of the assets that are left if it's just a rental, but there are some guys out there who have some term left on their contract, but I don't know what those other teams are looking to acquire, so it's hard to really speculate.
Yeah. I think the biggest dilemma is that you want to make this move to make it now, but some of the players that could become available this summer or next that you're going to need these prospects to get, if you give them away now, you could be shut out of the next deal. And so, I'm thinking of guys like Brady Tkachuk. He's somebody that the Wild would give anything for, but he's probably not available now. But what if he is this? What if he starts to indicate, I'm not re-signing in Ottawa, which I don't think he is. Now all of a sudden you traded Jesper Wallstedt for Vincent Trocheck or something. Obviously Volley doesn't make sense for them because of Shesterkin, but you get my drift. It's the one thing they have to be careful for is not taking the first thing that falls in their lap because they feel the pressure to do it now. It's none of us want to be patient anymore. That's been around either covering this team or watching this team for years, but you kind of got to be, because you've given up so many assets in the Juracek deal and the Hughes trade and the Huzandinov trade and the Gus Nyquist trade, things like that. So if you're talking about now, they're going to be, they're calling on everybody. They're calling on Robert Thomas. They're asking about Jordan Kyrou. They're asking on Nico Hischier. They're asking on Trocheck, Miller. They're calling everybody. And right now, because the way the standings are too, there aren't so many clear sellers, especially in the East, where, a couple wins, you're suddenly in the playoffs.
Another guy I thought of today is Nazem Kadri. I don't know what his future's like in Calgary. I don't know, but he's a guy that would intrigue me too if it's depending on the package. And, there's a lot of guys like that, but it's hard to speculate because you really have to understand the other team's roster to know, all right, what would they be looking to acquire, and is it a fit?
Yep. Question, then we'll bring Mark up. And if you have questions for all of us on hockey, Dallas Stars, Chicago Blackhawks, Wild, sports writing, sports broadcasting, you come up as well.
My question is more towards the Olympics, and you guys talked about these guys being tired. Push comes to shove, it seems like it's inevitable that we play the Dallas Stars in the playoffs, and with 10 games left, if we're somewhat already more locked in than we are now, do you see us resting some of those guys that are going to be at 90 games after the Olympics? Because it doesn't matter if we're the 2 or the 3, it does, but 90 games for a Boldy versus 80 games with the 5 to 8 games or whatever it is in the Olympics, resting some of those guys to, how much benefit do you see in that and possibility in it?
Yeah, I don't know. That'll be an interesting discussion. And I know John's been asked about it a few times here lately, and and I think he's honest when he's saying it, that he hasn't given that a ton of thought yet. There's a lot of hockey to be played between now and then, and some things could change. Dallas is going to be in the same spot. They've got more than a few guys that are heading over there too. So I don't know. I've always believed the home ice is valuable, and I know a few years ago the Wild said we don't really care if we get home ice or not, but boy, especially in a series like that against Dallas, where I think matchups are key, and I know the Wild haven't had great luck at home here over the last 7 games, but prior to that this year, they were really good at home. Dallas is tough at home. I'd be battling to try to get that edge if I could.
Yeah, I think that'll determine it. If it's locked where one's home ice versus road, I think it makes sense.
Well, yeah, then you'd rest for sure.
But it also isn't you're not going to, in hockey, one of these guys are going to want to play. You don't want to, we've seen it before where the Wild rests guys down the stretch and then they suddenly wind up a little, rusty going in the playoffs. Even remember with the year that Kaprizov got hurt and they didn't want to risk it. And then he went into the Dallas series feeling like he was not on top of his game. So a lot of it's to be determined, Did you have another one or?
I did.
Okay.
It's a kind of a smaller one. You talked about the trade targets. Pavel Zacha kind of lines up with 2 years, 5.6, I think. And then Jared McCann, I think, is 3 years at right on $5 million as well. Zacha's kind of the same thing as Ek, a 2-way guy. but a lot better at the dot. I think 54.5 I looked today.
Yeah.
And then Jared McCann, to me, across from a Boley and an Ack, is a 30 goal guy or 35 goal guy, and could make a lot of impact in that top six.
Yeah, and I feel like Seattle is a team that's probably going to be selling.
Even though they said they're trying to acquire top six, I think it's kind of
I know, and they're like apparently reportedly, I haven't heard this, but they're reportedly kind of using Shane Wright as bait. I like Zaka. I like McCann. I like him as quotes. Anthony, what do you think of them as players?
Well, I know we always base people's trade value on whether or not
as Mark
you've sat
Lazarus
down
will
with
point
them.
out, that's the most important thing, personality.
We listened to it a whole summer about there was all the guys that Russo had a chance to sit down with at the media tour that that's the guy the Wild should be targeting. And so I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at the roster that would have been
here.
built.
I want Alex Wemberg here. I want Michael Backlund here.
I'm going to go back and look at the guys that you said that we should get just because they were great guys when you talked to them. And you haven't yet come back from one of these saying, yeah, that guy I didn't like at all.
I know I could name one right now, but I won't.
Okay. So it's like 31 out of 32 so far that have been great guys.
I'll just say one person I sat down with in Prague. If I never talked to him again, I'd be fine with it. So,
who was the guy that you used to think had it out for you that we got into an elevator with one
James
time?
Neal.
James Neal, yeah.
I didn't think he did.
Yeah. He was absolutely convinced that he was like staring him down in the elelevator. I was like, I
was in the Raleigh.
He knew you were in the elevator.
No, he saw me. All right, let's take a break, but we're going to bring up Mark Lazarus at the break. We'll be back on Worst Seats in the House. Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today. Okay, it's time to talk about New Year's resolutions, but let's talk about one that is actually achievable, truly good for you, your home, and your family, and will help you today and for years to come. Of course, I'm talking about finally fixing your problem water. It's time to enjoy all that a Connecticut water treatment system can provide, like spotless dishes, softer skin, cleaner laundry, and finally saying goodbye to that funny taste and odor in your water. Connecticut water treatment systems use zero electricity and provides the most efficient system in the world. Purified drinking water straight from your faucet, and you'll be amazed at how little salt you use. Fix your water today. Enjoy no payments and no interest for 6 months on a new high-efficiency Connecticut water treatment system from Aquarius Home Services. Yep, enjoy today and don't pay until this summer. I can tell you firsthand, the team at Aquarius works hard to treat you, your home, and your time with respect. Working with Aquarius and enjoying worry-free water is one of the best things I've ever done for my home. Worry-free water all starts with a free water test. Visit AquariusHomeservices.com to schedule your appointment today. You know the drill, financing based on a credit approval. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to tell them that Russo sent you. Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Happy to be joined by the Athletics' Mark Lazarus. Used to be the Chicago Sun-Times from Long Island. Big Mets fan, sorry.
The last couple of weeks have been a little bit better.
Yeah, the off season's always big for the Mets.
Roller coaster.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark is our Chicago Blackhawks writer, and as I joke, so Mark's one of our national writers, so he's spent a lot of times covering the Dallas Stars as well in the playoffs last couple of years. He'll be joining me in the Olympics in Milan next month, so really excited about that. And we also call him our resident White House reporter because he's lucky enough to cover Stanley Cup champions.
It's been a while, man.
I know.
2015 was a long time ago.
You went from being like the winningest hockey writer ever to like the last couple of years have been tough.
I joke all the time about like I've been covering the Hawks now this is my 14th season. I have never once covered a meaningful regular season game. They've always been too good or too bad for the regular season to matter. And this guy has only covered regular season games that matter. Because the Wild are scratching and clawing every single year just to get that 8 seed. So
every single night,
this guy's talking about resting guys. Like that's my world, man.
Every night's been a grind it's this 14 years for me with the Wild play-by-play job, and it's been there haven't been more than 10 games total at the end of seasons that didn't matter.
Yeah,
seriously.
We had 1 year where they were out of the playoffs, and about the last 6 really didn't matter, and a few other years where it was one or two at the end, maybe.
The last time the Hawks had that was 2011, which is 2 years before I even started covering them.
Yeah, and Wild fans know that because they ran right into the Hawks "quote unquote" dynasty. But what you said is actually interesting. Like I tell Wild fans that all the time. Like there are a lot of Wild fans that are understandably cynical because they haven't had their postseason success. Even though this is
and they have a beat writer that tells them to be cynical.
Yeah, that's true, 100%. I'm not gonna. I won't argue that one. But the one thing about covering the Wild and being a Wild fan is that you get to enjoy the regular seasons. I mean, the games are exciting. You have really great players, and that is important. Like there's the cynical Wild fan that's just like, wake me up in the playoffs when they win a round. But like the fun of sports is the 82 games before you get there.
Well, I had this discussion for the last couple of seasons before the Hawks really went in the tank. Would you rather have been a Bruins fan or a Blackhawks fan for that 10-year span? Because flags fly forever. I get it. And the Hawks won 3 and the Bruins only won 1. But the Bruins' years of contention was much, and they're doing it again this year where they're still in the playoff mix. And they went back to the final in, 2019? If you were a Bruins fan, you got more years of relevance. The Blackhawks had 6 years. They won 3 cups. It was amazing, and no Hawks fan would ever give it up for anything. But the Bruins fans got more bang for their buck over the last 12, 13 years. There is something to be said for relevance versus just spiking a title every now and then.
Well, that's a point that I've made for years, is that if the trade-off is that I've asked fans that it's an impossible hypothetical to answer, but before the Blackhawks had their run, I think it was 8 out of 9 years or 9 out of 10 that they had missed the playoffs.
Yeah, it's 49 years without a cup.
Yeah, but not even in the playoffs for, I think it was 9 out of 10. And now since that run, what is it right now? It's been 9 out of 10.
They
or
haven't
10
made
out
the
of
playoffs
11.
since 2017. I don't count the bubble because they were one of the play-in games. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, so it's all or nothing. I'd almost rather be kind of in it every year.
And so what I've always thrown out to Wild fans is, are you willing to continue to come to the games for a decade knowing that you have no chance? No chance to make the playoffs, no chance to even play meaningful games in March or April. Are you still going to buy your season tickets? Are you still going to watch every game on TV? Are you still going to buy apparel? Just so that then when you get that 3, 4, 5 year window that's open and a chance to win a cup, then everybody wants to be a Wild fan then. But it's something. It's been 11 out of 13. The Wild have been in the playoffs. Yeah, and that's a lot of fun at the end of the season.
Fully, as a Mets fan, I fully understand the postseason frustration of coming up short year after year. And I was there for 2013, 2014, 2015. Just bam, you're out every time. I understand that frustration. But there is something to be said for this team hasn't bottomed out. The Wild, when was the last time the Wild sucked?
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
They're middling and they're mediocre and they're maddening and they're frustrating. But they never suck.
Yeah,
and I get it. You'd probably rather have the flags, but
we like to think of them as above average instead of mediocre.
They've been mediocre
or mild, as a lot of out of town fans like to call them.
At least they're not boring anymore. They used to be mediocre and boring.
Yeah, no, they're not.
They are
that
not
anymore.
at all boring.
Yeah,
anymore.
no,
So
they have.
That's exciting. At least,
again, I mean, I know you've covered Quinn Hughes a lot of games, but wait till you see him tomorrow. I was talking to his mom about it today. I've never seen a defenseman like this. That just he's
Matthew
got the
Schaefer.
puck. He's got the puck on his stick 5 minutes a game. That's crazy.
It's funny because I always said people make fun of me because my favorite player. I always think of him as a top 5 player in the world. He's clearly not a top 5 player in the world, but the single player in the league I most enjoy watching is Jack Hughes.
Yeah,
and it's kind of the same thing. They just play a style
they have
that
the
is
puck
just
on their stick
joyful to
all
watch
the time, and he mentions 5 minutes, and it's just a shade under 5. But it's a minute plus more than any other player in the league. And that ratio is incredible to me.
Yeah. Duncan Keith used to do that. Duncan Keith led the league in ice time a decade straight. And it's because not only was he good, he was smart. He knew how to conserve his energy on the ice, and Quinn's the same way. These guys that can play 28, 30 minutes a night, they're not going hard for 28, 30 minutes a night. They're not stupid. Yeah. They know exactly when to dial back, and they have the ability and that quick twitch to turn on the afterburners when they have to. And it's what allows them to play that way. I don't think the wear and tear on Quinn Hughes is all that bad because he doesn't play that kind of game.
Duncan Keith is so smart. He once cross-checked or slashed Charlie Coyle in the head and got an unpaid vacation until the playoffs. Genius.
Oh, that's right.
Remember that?
Duncan Keith outside of Chicago, less popular.
Yeah. And it was, remember, the suspension that he got for taking a wild one-handed swing at Coyle were 2 meaningless regular season games.
That's my point. You got an unpaid vacation.
It was not that these guys are bitter about it.
No. Remember, I showed up and win it
because Charlie Coyle was the difference between that team beating those Blackhawks.
It was.
Yeah.
Hey, wow. Lionel,
Just saying.
that poor guy.
No.
1,000 games.
Half that Hawks team could have been benched and they still would have won that series.
Yeah, all right. So you and I and Anthony, we have one thing in common: the joy of covering a Foligno. You get to cover Nick, one of the most quotable players in the league. We get to cover Marcus on a daily basis, one of the most quotable. And I know Nick too, but I mean, Marcus is as good a human being as I've ever covered.
It's not just that they're quotable; it's that they're like normal human beings.
Yeah,
like there's so many guys in this league that are like aliens, like they've never lived in the real world, and they don't know how to fly commercial, and they think that we're on their plane when we're not, and we're like getting to the airport at 4 a.m. for a 6 a.m. flight. They have no understanding of that. The Folignos are like actual fully functioning members of society, which is unusual for people as wealthy as they are. Yeah. And they get it. They understand that they'll see you walk into a morning skate exhausted, be like, oh, you're on the 6 a.m. this morning? It's like, yeah. Like they get it. Yeah. Like that's rare in this league.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And tell me about Nick though, because the one thing about them is they are very different. Like, they're the same, but they look different. They play different. But Nick, from a class standpoint, is just the same. Like, Marcus is as like we were talking on the way when we were driving here, and when you're like, oh yeah, I texted Nick about this today, and I'm like, that's the same thing with Marcus. Yeah. It's like they're just again,
well, they're old school in that way, right? Like if you text a 25-year-old player these days, they're like, oh my god, they go running and crying to PR about this person's annoying me on my off time, But the thing about Nick is it's funny because when he came in, there was a portion that they basically got him to be the transitional captain between Taves and Bedard. Like, obviously, Connor Bedard's going to be the captain of this team next year because this is Foligno's last year. And that's what Nick Foligno was brought in to do, basically. And he is so earnest and so corny, for lack of a better word. Like, I don't mean that derogatorily. Like, he's a little corny and cheesy sometimes about he really is everyone's dad, everyone's big brother, that a large portion of the fan base that was used to, like, Jonathan Taves, Bowl Captain Serious, and Brent Seabrook, Mr. Sarcastic guy, like, they did not know how to handle him, and they hated him. They thought it was all phony. They thought it was an act. Like, oh, he's just doing this so we can get on TV after his career is over. But you hang around him enough times, and that's just who he is. Yeah. He is dad. He is big brother. He is this big goofball, this big cornball, and he's so earnest, but he means it. He means every last bit. There's not a shred of dishonesty in that guy. He so badly wants to see these young guys succeed. He knows exactly the job he was brought in for, and he knows he's not going to be here if and when this team ever wins a championship again, but he's going to be at home just beaming like a proud dad.
He's like the Rick Dudley of the Chicago Blackhawks. He built them up and then he leaves.
Yeah,
and win the cup.
You plant a seed in the garden, you don't get to see grow.
Yeah, exactly. That was Rick in Tampa too. But the one thing about Foligno and to that point, I remember this summer he did the Camp Foligno where he brought up. I think Connor was the only one that didn't come up there, but I mean it was
busy filming commercials.
Yeah, I know.
Probably.
But it was Nazer and
Ollie Moore, I think, was there.
Landon
and
Slaggert
Sam Renzel and Slaggert.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And he had these guys living in his house in Sudbury, outside Sudbury, and he essentially he got himself like a trailer that guys would live in too, and he puts them through a whole camp that Marcus Foligno is part of, and Marcus has become now friends with all these these Blackhawks. It's pretty
he genuinely wants them to become better people, not just better hockey players. Like it's a rare thing in the NHL to find someone who's that. Yeah. I mean, it's again corny, but it's selfless.
Yeah,
it's not about him. He's not putting on a show. He genuinely cares.
Now tell Anthony, because Anthony is a big Connor Bedard hater. Tell Anthony
who isn't in this league.
Yeah. Tell Anthony why Connor Bedard is going to be a great NHL player.
He already is a great NHLer.
I mean that obviously sarcastically.
He already is, obviously, but he was the last 2 years. If you saw who he was playing with guys who couldn't make the roster on half the team. They were his line mates on the quote unquote top line. And I think it was who posted this just a couple days ago. I saw Dom retweeted it. It might have been Jay Fresh or one of those guys. Or no, it might have been Chris Watkins. That Connor Bedard had the worst usage of like any young player in the history of the NHL. Like they put him in the worst possible situations, the hardest defensive matchups. Like they just put everything on this kid at 8. He was the 12th youngest player in the history of the NHL. And they basically made him be Patrice Bergeron in terms of his matchups and stuff. And the fact that he still came out with like 60 something points a year and 20 something goals a year, despite getting injured and whatnot, and, had his sanity intact, is a testament to this kid's toughness and just how talented he is. And we saw the first half of this year, he's taking that leap. It took him a third year instead of Celebrini and Crosby and McDavid all won the MVP in their second year. Sure, great, awesome. Those guys rule. But if Bedard is this player now and he's like 120 point pace, he missed a month because of the shoulder injury, but he was at like 120 point pace as a 20-year-old. Kid's fine.
Yep. By the way, I sat down with Bedard before the season.
Yeah, so the Wild should trade for him.
Yeah, a great quote.
Yeah.
And the one thing I did see this coming.
Great quote.
He was good then.
He's
sent you all the audio.
He's getting better. He's understandably guarded.
The one thing about him is that he wants to be a great player, and man, did he put in a summer.
He's like Timothée Chalamet. Timothée Chalamet's out there saying like, "I want to be the greatest actor of all time." Like Bedard thinks the same thing. Like, he's like, "I want to be the greatest," and the greatest always do.
And I remember talking to the broadcasters when he was coming up, and they said, this guy, he's got a work ethic that's different. He's the last guy out on the ice every day. And they believed in him, but just saw a lot of young flaws in his game.
Well, sure.
Understandably so. I see it. He looks like a different player to me this year than he's looked the last couple 100%. Of years.
He's so much tougher on the
battle
puck.
level that the first 2 years, I know that you can dismiss some of it with who he was playing with, but he was also by far the biggest minus guy on his own team. And it was when the Wild would play against him, it was this guy, he never wins a puck battle.
You guys love your plus minus in Minnesota.
We do love the plus minus.
You wanted Brock Faber to win that Calder so freaking bad. There was no chance.
There was no chance.
And I love Brock Faber. I think he's great.
But there was no chance, and that was actually why he says I'm a Connor Bedard hater, because Bedard was going to win that award before the season ever started. It was already decided.
It was his to lose, yes. I'll give you that.
And he is going to be a Hart Trophy candidate. Brock Faber never will. He will be, so I guess to some degree, he will have a better career in the NHL than Brock Faber ever will. He'll be a more noticeable player. But that year, Brock Faber's impact on a team competing for a playoff, playing against the best of every
also
team.
4 years older than Connor Bedard was.
He is, but that doesn't matter when you're voting for who had the best rookie season.
Yeah, people do. Artemi Panarin, a lot of people didn't vote for him for Calder.
Right, but that's because he was 25. Writers that don't have any idea what they're voting for.
You just said the voters.
I know, but I'm saying they're flawed. Because and we saw Kaprizov win it and still had people that barked that he shouldn't win it because of how old he was. But my point that year was, if you just looked at that season, I argued that Faber's season was a more impressive year than Bedard's.
And I generally speaking, I agree that I much favor a young defenseman over a young forward. It's so much harder to be a young defenseman.
Right. And he was playing meaningful minutes down a playoff race, and he had an unbelievable year. That's when I became a Connor Bedard hater, so to speak.
By the way, before we just quickly ask you about Dallas and we bring up our person that's been patiently waiting there, he said that the writers don't know what they're doing. Remember, the broadcasters vote for Jack Adams. And John Cooper and Jared Bednar have never won a freaking Jack Adams.
Is it finally Cooper's year, or did the Ducks winning 5 games in a row again all of a sudden give it to
I know.
Again?
It's going to be changing.
I have voted for Jared Bednar both of the last 2 seasons just for that reason, where I felt like just because and actually I voted for John Cooper too, but it was the Bednar thing was just because you have the best players doesn't mean that you can't also be the best coach.
Cooper's a runaway this year with the injuries that they've dealt with and what that team has been able to do.
Yeah,
who's a worse voting block, the GMs or the
GMs, because it's such a conflict of interest.
It doesn't matter what wins.
If I was a GM of a team, I would look, all right, whose contract is up that I could vote for the Vezina and really screw the salary cap for that team. It's like all of a sudden the year that Philip Gustafson got his new contract, suddenly he had a bunch of Vezina votes. Real quick on the Dallas Stars, because you are a resident Dallas Stars writer at The Athletic, as we like to joke. Wild Dallas Stars, you're going to enjoy that series.
Yeah, that'd be a great one. I mean, that's the as a fan of a Central Division team, it's the worst thing in the world. As a writer in the Central Division, this stupid playoff format is great for us because I get Colorado, Dallas in the first round or whatever. Yeah,
and you'll get you'll get 852 Central starts the whole time.
We're getting those no matter what. Yeah. I got those throughout the Hawks playoff. The NHL offices believe that Chicago is on the West Coast.
Right. The same and they believe that St. Paul and Dallas are suburbs of each other.
Yeah. I love that you ripped the playoff format without even being prompted by me, because Anthony and I get into this debate every week.
We've had 3 of those games in the regular season this year. Yeah. We had an 8:57 p.m. start.
Oh, I know. We just had back-to-back, 8:30, 8:45, blah, blah, blah. All right. You've been waiting long enough. Question.
Unity over selfish shirt says. That is a very hockey shirt.
So I'm just wondering, with the Wild as contenders this year, obviously dipping into the trade market with Quinn already and looking to do it again. What are your guys' thoughts with these GMs? What is the point where they start making these assets available? Is it 5 points out of the playoffs? We've got Nashville, I think 3 out of the playoffs right now. Seattle's right there with them. We got Jared McCann mentioned earlier. What is the point where those GMs start making those assets available?
Well, you guys need Vincent Trocheck, and he is already available. Yeah. So if I'm Bill Guerin, I'm going, I think that's the answer here. You guys need so much help down the middle. I love Joel Eriksson-Ek. He is not a top-line center. He's the perfect number 2 center. And if you can get a guy like Trocheck who can play that kind of game and also produce, and it just moves Ryan Hartman down to that third line, all of a sudden the whole piece is coming into place because the wings are so strong here, and it's so weak down the middle. It's just this black hole down the middle. I'd be going so hard after Trocheck right now because we got this. When is the roster freeze?
February 4th.
February 4th. So we got this little faux deadline here.
It's funny because what you just said is really interesting to me, because I have no doubt in my mind that Vincent Trocheck, that inside this organization, they think he'd be the perfect person here. But the one thing I do get the impression of is that they have not aggressively gone after him yet, for kind of what I said earlier in the show, is that they know they have precious few assets. And it's like, all right, but what if we can get a Robert Thomas? What if we can get, you know what I mean? So it's like they don't want to overdo it now.
This is something that the Wild have to get used to, is being a contender is making these hard choices. And a lot of it's because of that question, is that you have these teams that right now are start kind of hemming and hawing, and where are we? Are we going to make the playoffs?
And his question was more about the sellers.
Yeah.
Like, when do they officially become sellers? And I think that varies by team. And a lot of times it's, okay, even if you're 3 points out, but you're looking at a roster that deep down, well, even if we get in, it's not ready to compete against the teams that you're going to have to compete against. Yeah. So for some teams, it might come sooner than others. You look at Florida, their 3 points out is very different than Nashville's 3 points out.
Great point.
And this is going to be a seller's market, because there's going to be more buyers than there are sellers, just because of the way the East is built.
Great point. David.
Mark, know the room.
No,
coming in here.
Someone's got to come here and play the heel, man.
And coveting Boston's run when you won 3 cups in 6 years. Know the room. We haven't won shit since 1965. Never.
No, I got to play the heel, man.
I have just a quick question about St. Louis. Do we want Braden Shen or Robert Thomas out of there?
I mean, I think Robert Thomas, but Shen is somebody that's a very much a Bill Guerin player. Obviously, would come cheaper, I would think.
So are they ready to give up on Binnington there and perhaps take a Wallstead? Because that might be what it's going to take to get.
To me, though, like if you,
why are you so desperate to trade Jesper Wallstedt?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody just realizes.
I've got this writer in my ear who keeps telling me it's going to happen. I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah,
having 2 goalies is important in the NHL these days.
No, you're right. It's not that they're desperate. Like, trust me, I don't think they want to do it, but I think that they realize that when they trade Marco Rossi, Zeev Boyum, and leave Ogren away, and in their first and a second last year and who's like
running out of assets.
Yeah, you're running out of assets, and everybody needs a goalie. But to me, on your point, like that has to be a Robert Thomas. It better not be a Braden Shen. Same thing. It's got to be a Brady Tkachuk. It better not be a Vincent Trocheck.
Doesn't it feel like every year we talk about so many teams need goalies, and then nobody ever actually trades for goalies? It's really hard for a goalie to adapt to a new team. Or
Carolina, and you get Boosie off waivers
out of nowhere,
and he turns out to be a Vezina candidate, and then you look back on his Instagram, and you're like, oh my God, that guy was at Wild Development Camp.
I saw him
4 years ago.
I remember walking into Florida Panthers during training camp. I went to the room, I'm like, who the hell is Brandon?
Somebody remember when Binnington burst on the scene, the year he did. Mike Yeo had been their coach, and I texted him and I said, hey, did you ever see this coming with Binnington? He said, I had never even heard of him. Yeah. He wasn't even on our radar. Like, they had 4 goalies in camp that year, and he wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
Goaltending is nonsense.
Yeah. And then they fire Mike Yeo, and then hey, let's bring up
Jordan Binnington.
Mike Yeo, permanent interim coach in the NHL.
Yeah, well, that's John Trichetti's role. But it is, I mean, it's like, honestly, somebody sent me this the other day about hey, look at Bussey's Instagram account. It's like him thank you to the Minnesota Wild for a dream of coming to their development camp. I'm just like, whoa.
You know who could use him too right now is the Florida Panthers. They're going to go on waivers this year.
Exactly. All right. Final couple questions. So if you do have a question, come on up, or we're going to wrap up the show soon.
Taking the topic in a different direction, as writers, how often do you find yourself working on a story when you think something's going to happen versus knowing?
2 days ago. I'm trying to say this in a way that's not going to offend some writers, but some of our writers at The Athletic got a bad scoop that the Wild were imminently about to trade for Vincent Trocheck, and I was getting radio silence from people that mattered. So I'm like, me and those writers and Joe, we got into a Google Doc and wrote a Vincent Trocheck story. So if Vincent Trocheck is traded here, the story is done. So that way.
I think this probably happens to me more than Mike, because Mike actually knows what's going to happen and I don't. I am guessing. So I pre-write. I don't pre-write, but I pre-think a lot about, well, they do this, maybe I'll write this. He actually knows what's going to happen.
I don't know how many of you actually read Mark, but you should definitely, the cool thing about the Athletic app is you could either follow the Blackhawks or just follow him as a writer, but he is as good as it is at the Athletic in terms of writer speed. I mean, he's the one, remember the Rocky Wirtz when you got into the thing there, and
like, you were there that day.
Yeah, we were there that day. He gets into this town hall fight with Rocky Wirtz. We're watching it on TV in the press room, and I go up to the press box, and he's like, all right, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, are you going to write a column off this? He goes, it's done. I'm like, this happened like 30 minutes ago. He wrote an entire column that sung. And
anger's a good motivator.
Yeah. And so we had an Olympics meeting today, and we were talking about how we're like, a bunch of us are going to the Olympics, like 30 of us at the Athletic, but like 5 covering hockey. And we were talking about how we're getting back to the hotel and things. And I said, my biggest concern is that, like, we're going to want to share Ubers, and I'm going to be looking at Lazarus, and he's going to have his feet up on the press box table. And I'm going to be like, the what? Like it's going to be like, let's put it this way. Speed is not my strength. That's for sure.
We all have our strengths, Mike.
Yes,
we
exactly.
do okay.
So question.
What is Damon Hunt's future with the Minnesota Wild?
Great question. We're both fans of him.
Yeah, I think he's got a future here, and we don't know what's going to happen after this season with Zach Bogosian, but to me, I would love to go into a season with Damon Hunt as my extra defenseman.
Yeah. Or I think he has the ability of 5.
I think he for sure could play. That's what I mean. Like here, if he's your extra defenseman, you got something going. Because I think
luxury that most teams don't have.
They don't, right? And if he's a third set defenseman he could be a third set defenseman on a good team.
Yeah, I agree with you. Any other questions? You sure? Going once? You don't get to come out and meet Anthony LaPanta and Mark Lazarus on an everyday basis.
Right. Oh boy, dare to dream. Dare to dream.
Who's everybody's favorite Blackhawk?
Yeah.
Oh, but were you the ceremony they just had for Taves when he came back?
Yeah.
I saw the video of that. What a cool night.
It was really good. I thought it was going to not be that big of a deal because he got the big send off because they basically announced the morning of his last game that they weren't going to re-sign him. And so, like, the fans kind of gave him that moment, and he scored in that game and everything. And when Kane came back, it was a huge deal. He scored the game winner in overtime, and the Hawks fans were cheering a Red Wings win. It was bizarre. Taves, it was like twice as long. It was 5.5 minutes all told that people were. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. And it was great to see. I mean, he was the face of the franchise there, and the personality of the franchise followed him. Just so matter of fact, business, professional. We're coming here tonight to kick your ass, kind of thing. And I loved him as a player during those times.
Yeah, and you could tell he was humbled by it. He was like, "Come on!"
I think he was a little surprised too.
Yeah,
he was like, "All right." About halfway through, he just gave up and he just kind of started laughing to himself.
And he's always Captain Serious, and yet he's the smile comes across his face and all that.
I think he's enjoying not being the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. He's getting to be just another hockey player.
Yeah,
and he's never been that in his career. I think he's actually really.
Well, this would be a good year to not be the captain up there.
Yeah, I mean the Jet season's not going as you want, but I do think he's just enjoying being just a guy.
What would it be? Jonathan Taves to the Minnesota Wild. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd take him.
Yeah. Jonathan Taves is the one that
and he still wins 65% of his faceoffs.
That doesn't go away.
2014 Olympics, Jonathan Taves is the one that ruined the Wild. Remember that? The game before the Olympic break, he comes here and gets 5 points, and then the Wild decide that we're going to give up the world for Marty Hansel.
Yeah.
And then we got to get we're Marty Hansel away from shutting down Jonathan Taves in the 2014 playoffs.
2014 Jonathan Taves was as good a hockey player as I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was good. All right, final question of the show. Unless anybody else wants to come up.
More so for Mark, based off your comments in 2024 for the Kaprizov deal, how much do you think money did you cost the Wild on that extension?
Seriously. That's a great question and a great memory. If people don't remember,
I had
it was
heard
Mark Lazarus that put out there that the Blackhawks were preparing off of the world for Kirill Kaprizov. $17 million a year.
I had said was that the Blackhawks had this long-term vision, and last summer was the year they thought they might be turning the corner, and they were like, "Who's going to be our Marian Hossa, the big signing that turns us from pretty good into great?" And they're like, "Well, Kirill Kaprizov would be that guy, wouldn't he?" And they were. It was the idea was in their head, and they were certainly going to have the money to do it. That's all I ever said.
So you were tampering.
I'm allowed to tamper. I'm a writer.
What a memory by you. It's almost like you came up and brought up the fact that he questioned the fact that Matt Boldy was going to be in the Four Nations in the Olympics. So who would remember something like that?
Dude, if we had a pile of things I've been wrong about over the years, you wouldn't be able to see me right now.
Oh, man. That's great.
He's
great
the newsbreaker. I'm the writer.
Great final question. All right, awesome. So we will have, Anthony and I will have one more podcast before we go to the Olympics that will not be live. That'll come out next Monday or Tuesday. And then we will have three other shows in February. We'll figure that out depending on our schedules and time changes and things like that. Maybe Anthony will do a live show
TBD
with a guest host named Kevin Gorg. Who knows? That'd
It's
be
possible.
fun, don't you think?
I'm not riding with him. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, Wes Walls' son's biggest excitement in the world was having Kevin Gorg interview him between periods. Don't you think you two should come out to a? Yeah,
I've had plenty of conversations with Kevin over the years, so they're not at the top of my list.
All right,
but we might have Kevin on with us for a show, which would be fun. He's an entertaining guy, and he and I go way back.
Yeah. Rebecca, before you leave, I got to introduce you to Mark Lazarus because he'll not only love to meet you, but he's going to remember the story that you're a big part of that went viral. All right, thanks for everybody coming out to Elsie's. Awesome that you guys braved this winter cold and other stuff that's going on here in the Twin Cities. As I mentioned, we'll have some live shows in March as well. Thanks for joining us in the Aquarius Home Services studio. Thanks to our sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems and Onyx Maps. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
So much coming out, there's